Have you ever wondered what our planet was like before the dinosaurs? We often think of them as the beginning of ancient history, but Earth's story is so much older, so much wilder. Let's travel back in time, hundreds of millions of years before the first T-Rex ever roared, to a world that was truly alien. Long before the age of giant reptiles, our planet was a raw and chaotic place. Imagine a world where the continents we know today didn't exist. Instead, massive supercontinents like Rodinia, and later, the famous Pangaea, were constantly shifting, crashing together and pulling apart. This tectonic dance was epic, creating colossal mountain ranges and vast, deep oceans that would become the cradle for all life to come. The landscape itself was a dramatic canvas painted by fire and water. Volcanoes were everywhere, spewing molten rock that flowed across barren lands, while relentless, heavy rains carved deep valleys into the fresh crust. These downpours filled the primordial seas with minerals and nutrients, creating a rich chemical soup. And high above, the atmosphere was changing. It was thin, and not very breathable for us. But tiny, single-celled organisms were hard at work. These early photosynthetic life forms were pumping out oxygen, slowly, painstakingly, transforming the air and setting the stage for bigger, more complex creatures to evolve. Earth was terraforming itself. So, where was the action happening? It was all in the water. The oceans were a bustling, vibrant metropolis of early life. Forget sharks and whales. This was the era of bizarre and wonderful creatures. Trilobites, those armored, pilled bug-like arthropods, scuttled across the seafloor in their millions. The water was filled with some of the first fish, strange-looking critters with armored plates instead of scales, swimming through a world they were just beginning to conquer. Think of it as a chaotic, underwater laboratory. The first complex ecosystems were being built by coral-like organisms and mats of algae, creating reefs and structures that provided shelter and hunting grounds. Predators and prey were locked in an eternal, evolutionary dance. It was a brutal, eat-or-beaten world. But this constant struggle was the engine of innovation, driving life to become faster, stronger, and smarter. Every escape, every successful hunt, was a victory for survival that pushed life's boundaries a little further. Meanwhile, on the land, something truly revolutionary was beginning. For millions of years, the continents had been nothing but barren rock and sterile soil. But now, life was making its first brave move out of the water. The pioneers weren't mighty beasts, but humble plants. Patches of green mosses, liverworts, and early ferns started to cling to the damp, rocky edges of the land. They were the first colonists, and their impact was monumental. Slowly but surely, they broke down the rock, creating the very first soils. Their roots held the ground together, and as they died and decomposed, they enriched the land, making it more hospitable for future life. And where plants go, animals soon follow. The first creatures to crawl onto this new, green frontier were arthropods' ancestors of today's insects, spiders, and scorpions. Imagine giant millipedes, some several feet long, and sea scorpions testing the air, scuttling across the primordial terrain. Each step they took was a giant leap for life on Earth. They were explorers in a new world, finding food and shelter where none had existed before. This was a pivotal moment, laying the groundwork for the eventual rise of all land-dwelling vertebrates, including us. Life during this vast stretch of time was lived on the edge. The climate was anything but stable. It was a roller coaster of extremes. Massive ice ages would grip the planet, covering continents in sheets of ice kilometers thick, causing sea levels to plummet. Then, the planet would swing into periods of intense global warmth, melting the ice and causing the oceans to surge and flood the low-lying lands. Entire ecosystems were wiped out, then reborn. Volcanoes weren't just background features. They were major players, capable of reshaping entire regions, spewing ash that could darken the skies for years. Life had to be incredibly resilient and adaptable. Extinctions were a common, recurring event. But every extinction event, as devastating as it was, created new opportunities. It cleared the board, allowing new, experimental life forms to emerge and fill the empty niches. Evolution was throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick. New body plans, new ways of breathing, new methods of reproduction. It was a period of incredible biological creativity. Let's just stop and imagine the sounds of this ancient world. There were no birds singing, no insects buzzing like they do today. The soundscape was elemental, raw, and powerful. You'd hear the constant, deep rumble of volcanic eruptions, a reminder of the planet's molten heart. You'd hear the thunderous crash of waves against jagged, lifeless shorelines. And if you listened closely, you might hear the soft scuttling of those first arthropods moving through the damp, primitive forests, or the whisper of the wind blowing over a world that was still finding its voice. Life was both incredibly fragile and astonishingly tough, a testament to the power of survival against the relentless forces of nature. As we move toward the end of this era, the late Paleozoic, the world begins to look a little more familiar. The experiments of evolution were starting to produce more complex and recognizable organisms. The most significant of these were the first amphibians, picture creatures that looked like a cross between a fish and a lizard venturing out of the water. They were pioneers bridging two worlds, with limbs that could walk on land but skin that needed to stay moist, forever tying them to the water's edge. They were the first vertebrates to walk the earth. The plant kingdom was also having its own revolution. The simple mosses and ferns were now joined by towering, tree-like plants that evolved seeds. This was again, seeds allowed plants to conquer drier inland areas, away from the constant moisture of the swamps. Vast, dense forests spread across the continents for the first time. These weren't the colorful, flowering forests we know today. They were dark, alien-looking jungles of giant ferns, club mosses, and primitive conifers. And within the shadows of these new forests, another new creature was stirring. The first reptiles, small and lizard-like, they were the direct ancestors of the dinosaurs. Unlike amphibians, they had scaly skin and laid hard-shelled eggs, which meant they were finally free from the water. The stage was now perfectly set. Earth had transformed from a barren, hostile rock into a complex, interconnected world, ready for the dramatic age of giants that was about to unfold. To truly understand the world before the dinosaurs is to witness the very origins of life as we know it. It's a story of epic struggle, incredible adaptation, and endless experimentation that played out over hundreds of millions of years. It's a world where the first brave steps on land, the first terrifying predators in the ocean, and the first sprawling forests on the continents all played a crucial role in shaping our planet S. Every rock, every fossil, and every living thing today carries a piece of that ancient history within it. It's a reminder that our world was built on the successes and failures of countless creatures that came long before us. This pre-dinosaur era, though it seems distant and is largely invisible to us now, was absolutely essential. It wasn't just a prequel, it was the foundation for everything that followed. It created the oxygen we breathe, the soil that grows our food, and the biological diversity that makes our planet so special. Without the trilobites, the armored fish, the giant ferns, and the first amphibians, there would have been no Mesozoic giants, no dinosaurs, and ultimately, no mammals like us. Earth before the dinosaurs was a world of profound mystery, raw beauty, and incredible wonder. It was a planet where life, in its earliest, most experimental forms, began to fight for its place, carving out a future that would one day be dominated by unimaginable giants and eventually give rise to the world we call home. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this as fascinating as I do, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into our planet's incredible history. See you in the next one.